Addition to the NewsHour bookshelf. In The Road to Character, our own David Brooks urges us all to rethink our priorities. I talked with him late last week at Busboys and Poets, a restaurant and bookstore chain in and around Washington. David Brooks, thank you for talking to us about this.
Good to see you in the strange setting.
So the people who see you every week on the NewsHour analyzing the news or read you in the New York Times may not realize that you have a lot of interest in things that go beyond politics and policy. And they may be asking, is this the same David Brooks I see on television who wrote this book?
Yeah, I wasn't born with a tie or with Mark Shields stapled to my left hip. I have another life. And that's sort of the balance what this book is about. The idea is based on the idea that we have two separate sets of virtues, which I call the resume virtues and the eulogy virtues. And the resume virtues are the ones we bring to the marketplace. Are we good at being journalists or teachers or accountants? And the eulogy virtues are the things they say about you after you're dead, and they're deeper. Were you honest? Were you caring? Were you courageous? Were you capable of deep love? And we live in a culture, and I've lived a life that spent a lot more time thinking about the resume virtues than the eulogy ones. But we all know the eulogy ones are more important. And so this book is about people who developed those deeper virtues and how they did it.
Why has that struck a chord with you? Why did you want to spend time thinking about that and writing about it?
Sometimes you achieve a few things in life. I've achieved more career success than I ever experienced or ever thought. And I just realized it doesn't make you happy. It's an elemental truth. It's so true. Secondly, occasionally you would meet somebody. I remember I was up in Frederick, Maryland, and I ran into some ladies who tutor immigrants on how to read English. And it takes years for them to do this. And I walk into a room with about 30 or 40 of them, and I was immediately struck by a wave of inner light. They radiated an inner light of graciousness, of hope, of good cheer. They were patient. They weren't bragging about what wonderful work they were doing. They weren't thinking about themselves at all. And I remember looking at that inner light that they had, and I think I've achieved things in life, but I don't have that. I would love to have that. And the book doesn't get you there, but I wanted to study people who had that and figure out how they did it so I could at least someday try to get closer to that inner spiritual goodness that they had.
Well, and in fact you do. You pick out at least half a dozen extraordinary people, people who live lives of consequence, from St. Augustine to Samuel Johnson, Jane Addams, George Eliot, General Marshall.
Dorothy Day and Francis Perkins and Bayard Rustin.
Why did these people make the cut? What was it that sets them apart?
There were two things they did really well. First, they started out as sort of a mess. They were all sort of disorganized. They all had a sin, a core sin. For George Eliot, she was so emotionally needy. For Bayard Rustin, the great civil rights leader, he had an ego. For Dwight Eisenhower, it was a temper. For Dorothy Day, just fragmentation. But they all overcame it. They identified their core sin, what was weakest in themselves, and they did spiritual exercises and activities that turn their weakness into a strength. And by middle age, they'd achieved remarkable depth, remarkable goodness, and really a tranquility. And so I wanted to see people who transformed themselves inside. Of course, they achieved great things outside. But it was more important than what they did, but who they were is so inspiring. But it's nice to have that sort of community of friends and inspiration.
If you could boil it down to one thing, I mean, in a very simplistic way, is it we all need to think less about ourselves, to be more self-effacing?
Humility is what they all had. And some people think humility is thinking lowly of yourself. Some people think it's not thinking about yourself. But to me, the best definition of humility is radical self-awareness from a distance. Seeing themselves from a distance and saying, what's my problem? And so for Eisenhower, he had this furious passion and an anger and a hatred. But he knew he could not lead from a point of anger and hatred. So he constructed a persona that was gentle, that was convivial, and sort of a country club guy. And in some ways, he did it very, very shallow and superficial means. He hated people, so he'd write their names on a piece of paper and rip them up and throw them in the garbage can. In other ways, it was a deeper level of self-discipline. And so in my view, success is earned externally by being better than other people. But character, that sort of unfakeable goodness, is earned by being better than you used to be. And it's about self-confrontation.
You also say, I think toward the end of the book, the prescription is something like we all have to stand against the prevailing winds of whatever the culture is telling us to do. That's hard.
Yeah, we live in a culture of a big me. We're encouraged, we raise our kids to think how great they are. We have to market ourselves to get through life. We're in social media where we're broadcast highlight reels of our own lives on Facebook. And you know, especially me, I'm a pundit. I'm like paid to be a narcissistic blowhard and be in front of the camera. But the key to this kind of world and this kind of life is stepping outside that. And so one of the conclusions I came to was that it's your ability to make connections. The people who really have character make deep, unshakable connections to something outside themselves. They're capable of a web of unconditional love, and they're committed to tasks that can't be completed in a lifetime. Frances Perkins, one of my great heroes in the book, was committed to the cause of worker safety. And she was sort of committed to it for a little while, but then she witnessed the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire and saw hundreds of people die. And that was her call within a call. And after that crucible moment, her self quieted, her personal ambition went by the wayside. She just became an instrument for a cause. And she was a remarkable, remarkable person.
You said at the very beginning of the book you wrote this to save your own soul. Did you succeed in doing that? Did you save your soul?
No, reading a book and writing a book don't get you there. But I think it gives you a map. And I hope in the years ahead I can follow that map and become gradually a better person. I think, you know, in the last 5 years hanging around and being inspired by these people, I've changed a little. Hopefully I've gotten a little better. One of the things I'm now, people confide in me. They didn't used to confide in me, but hopefully I'm able to show a little more vulnerability. And I've read so much now about what suffering does to you, what love does to you, and I put it in the book, that hopefully I have something to say to these people. So I feel I made a little progress, but believe me, I'm capable of great bad behavior. I hold myself up. But I do think trying to live each day as a bunch of moral occasions. Did I live up to what I would hope? And if I didn't, what can I do tomorrow to be a little better? I do think we can improve. We get better at life as we get older.
David Brooks, we're glad to be able to talk to you about it, The Road to Character.
Thanks so much, Judy.
Thank you.